bright.
Hi, everybody. It's so bright.
Yeah, I know.
Can we turn them down a little bit? Is that
So we
all right?
can
I'm
see
such
people,
a
right?
yeah. I'm such a prima donna, or a diva. I'm a diva, actually. If you can turn them down a little bit, it would be nice. First of all, I'd say I'm honored
I am
to be up
honored.
here
I'm
with
like,
you.
I need
It's
to
really
stand.
fun. Nanfu, no, sit down, sit down. Nanfu just moved to New Jersey, and I live out there too, and so we're neighbors now. So it's even more special for me to be up here with you. So Nanfu just said, do you think there's possible what did you
I was
ask?
like, how many people here want to become cinematographers today?
And I said, well, let's ask. So who's in filmmaking here? Raise your hand if you're in filmmaking. Raise your hand if you're a cinematographer. Raise your hand if you want to be a cinematographer. Raise your hand if you're a producer, director, production assistant. Because I used to be a production assistant. All right, great. It's good to know who we're talking to. I don't know. I just want to. What do you do? It's so weird. Like we were talking on the phone before, and we're talking, and I was sort of trying to ask Nanfu, like, all right, well, let me ask you a little bit about this, and then we started talking so much. I'm like, all right, stop. It's like an interview when you start talking before the cameras are rolling. So now that the camera is rolling, and
And
we're
we
talking,
haven't talked as much, so there will be a lot of surprises.
That's true. So what should we do first? I mean, I'm just going to start off with this. When was the first time you picked up a camera with intention?
2011.
That pisses me off. I'm like, what? And tell me, like,
When and well and
why? Like, what
yeah,
was it
yeah.
exactly?
2011 was the year that I moved to the U.S. from China. It was the first time I left China, and I went to Ohio University, wanting to become a journalist, and that was the only university in the U.S. that gave me a scholarship and a stipend to study. So I actually was able to come with no money. And my major at the time was media studies. It's a very theoretical. So we took a lot of like audience engagement, quantity, quality analysis. I don't even remember. And I took one class that's documentary. And that was the first time I saw documentaries. And it was completely blew my mind. And I thought, oh, wow, I didn't know this kind of a medium existed. And this is something I wanted to do. But I didn't know how to shoot or how to edit or any of those things. So I asked several instructors who taught video production 101, photography 101, if I could sit in their class. And a few of them agreed. So I went to a photography class, and they have assignments. So one of the first assignments was you have to go out and take 150 photos, follow one event, and you come back and select 10 photos to present at the class. So because of that, I had to take a camera and I had to go take pictures, and I had never touched a camera before.
What
And
about iPhone?
I
iPhone?
didn't have an
You
iPhone
didn't-
then.
That's what I was
I
going
was
to
the
ask. Like,
poor
it's funny. Yeah, yeah.
internet.
Because I was wondering that before. I'm like, wait, she's so younger. So the iPhone might have been
Yeah.
around, so you didn't even
No,
know
I didn't have
iPhone.
no iPhone then. No, that was like Nokia.
Nokia. Let's not talk about Nokia.
I didn't have a smartphone until later. So anyway, so I was forced to go check out a camera in the school, and there was a long line. It
You're
was
talking
like
still camera though, right? Still or
the
still?
still camera
Yeah.
also can do video.
But you were.
But yeah,
the,
I didn't know how to do video back then, so I was just learning,
Right.
even like how to, I've not touched a camera. So I vividly remember that day, there was a long line in the school equipment room, and I was standing there, and I was looking like, my English was also bad. So everybody in front of me was like, I want the 35 millimeter, and I want a blah, blah, blah. And when it was my turn, I did not know what to ask because I did not understand what millimeter was.
I still don't.
Yeah, so so they asked me, what do you want? And I said, well, that one. And they turned around, look at the shelf, just so many lenses and camera. They go, which one? I said, that long one. So they gave me, it was embarrassing. Like I felt I was embarrassed. And I went back to my dorm, and then I was so excited. I opened it, the bag, and I couldn't figure it out. There was already a lens attached and then a separate lens that was for me. I didn't know how to take the lens off. So I was trying to twist, I was trying to push, pull, nothing happened. I didn't know that you have to hold the release button at the same time twist the lens. So yeah, that was 2011.
What I'm just curious, what kind of camera was it you met? Like,
I believe it's a Nikon, like
Nikon.
a 70D or something, a 7D, I don't know.
And so for me, like the question is, when you first started actually shooting those frames, like from this point of view, you know, with intention, do you remember, might not, like the actual, what you were shooting and how you felt when you were shooting those
Oh
first
yeah,
frames? That's what
oh
I
my
wanna
God.
know. Yeah.
It was so thrilling. I was tireless. And I think even till now, probably now is a little bit different because now I have a child and I'm very tired.
Me too.
But back then I was tireless. The first day I went out, I just kept taking photos and then at the time it was just the photos and nonstop. And the photos I took and I look, and of course I thought a lot of them were amazing. I came back and I had a very difficult time to pick only like 10 to 15 to present because I thought most of them are excellent. Just like, and I would crawl on the floor to take pictures, climb really high. I just like go to the angles that you don't actually see. And
But a lot
whenever,
of people don't do that, right? A lot of people sort of just stay.
yeah,
Especially with lighter cameras where you have to sort of hold them this way. You can't.
yeah.
People just sort of stay at this angle. But the fact that you had that
Yeah, I think
instinct to go,
that was what mostly excited me because it suddenly allowed me to see the world from different angles, unique angles. And because I had a camera, so it's not weird that I would crawl on the floor or, you know, like go take a picture of a dog from the feet or whatever. So it was like almost like now it gives me excuse to explore the world in a way that normally with my eyes I wouldn't have like done.
well, it's like for me, that's one of the most amazing things about this job. That if we're all a lot of documentary filmmakers, the most incredible thing is you get to go into situations you would never, ever, ever go into, and you get to meet the most incredible people from all the different, you know. So when, for me, it's amazing. For you, what's that? What's it like? What's your? How do you choose what to shoot? How do you choose like what? How do you choose your subjects, like your films? Like how did you choose? Did they choose you? Did you choose them? Like what's your process?
Oh, you mean like the subject
Yeah,
matter?
yeah.
Of
Like how
the,
did you know? I mean, I know what. So I guess what I'm saying is like, you know, is there like a thread that runs through your work, and that's sort of what helps you figure out, or you know, speaks to you,
I think
as
like
opposed to you know, I was doing this because you know what's
yeah, I think at the moment it's hard to tell like what's the threat, but now like One Child Nation is my third film, and looking back, and you kind of like look for the common thread. Or I got asked this kind of questions, like then it forced me to think.
right.
Did,
I hate when that happens. I'm sorry.
it's like was there a common thread? I think like originally every film kind of started spontaneously, almost. The first one, and then all of them was because of the childhood, the background that I had, and something that I think all of my previous experience in my life prepared me now that I would respond to certain kind of stories and felt, oh, I really cared about that, or I felt attracted, fascinated by this person. And the first film is about sex worker who protested, and
Hooligan Sparrow.
yeah, and
Gotta
that
see
one,
it. If you haven't seen it, you gotta see it.
that one, I think,
I was sorry. I'm just gonna say when I saw that, I was blown away. I thought, who is this person? And then I saw this nice person, you know, and I know your trick. I do. I've seen this before. Very sweet, nice, and like badass. It's great.
well, speaking of that, so after from Ohio, I came to NYU, and in between those 2 years, I did watch Born Into Brothels, and that was a great film, great film.
Well, thank you. Good night.
And, and that, like, you know, like, and made me question about the China's sex workers and people who lived on the bottom of the society, and that around that time, I also learned this woman who would offer sex to migrant workers for $2 each sex service. And so that was like, I wanted to make a film in that community and to show how their rights were violated by the police and how they struggled to even survive. And although the film eventually turned out to be a complete different film, but that was actually what initially attracted me to the story.
And so that's huge verite, following, right? Following. And then your next film, I'm Another You. Yeah. It's interesting, like for me, I was watching the progression of the shooting. First is like verite, the second one is a little more part verite, part style, part beauty, and then this one, when I was watching One Child Nation, I was sort of struck because like a lot of films, there's a lot of talking heads in this, if you want to call them talking heads, a lot of interviews. They don't feel like interviews. Like I felt like I was watching, but a verite film. It was very interesting. And then I went back and I'm looking at all these little, interviews. I'm like, wait, that feels so natural. Did she have a light there? Did she? I see the progression, and I love it when it feels like you're reacting to the subject matter and letting the subject matter dictate the style. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Hooligan Sparrow is completely verite. I mean, there are also like, sort of like, if people call it like interview, but you have a subject conversation, but it's definitely like conversation. I'm Another You was made over the course of 4 years, and it was like broken into 3 chapters. And the first chapter, I stayed on the streets with a homeless guy and basically filmed nonstop 24/7 of his life. Right. So that's what you say, complete verite. Right. And the second chapter was 2 years later when I went to his family and started discovering things. And with his father, then there was the interview. And the third chapter is interesting because the first chapter was completely shot by me, one person on the street living that life. Second chapter, me and my husband, then I don't know. Yeah, we were married then. Together went to shoot together.
That's a whole nother panel, working with your significant other.
So 2 of us went, and so it's 2 camera shoots. And the third chapter, because now we discovered a lot of like, mental reality of this guy. So a lot of us try to visualize what's in his head, what he would be thinking. And so this part is more constructed. So we had me, my husband, and another camera person. So 3 of us. So there were scenes actually we were trying, because the guy was trying to visualize his hallucination. So we actually had to shoot it in a way that is more like narrative, that he was presenting that to us, and then 2 cameras were shooting the filming of that. So yeah.
So before we, like, I do want to take that to One Child Nation, but with this, stepping out of one's comfort zone. Like, I don't know if your comfort zone was verite at that point, and was stepping out of your comfort zone and sort of going to that more, what the hell do we call it? Impressionistic B-roll. Can we come up with a name of this that's actually not embarrassing? That idea of, capturing things in sort of an impressionistic way. Were you scared about that? Because I get scared.
I wasn't scared for I'm Another You. I think I was a little bit nervous about the narrative part when we went to film, not knowing how that would turn out. But I think because we are also documenting the making of it. Right. So, and knowing that the making of it is just as important as the performance itself. So it wasn't that scary. But started making One Child Nation, the beginning of it, I was nervous because and it was actually an intentional choice in terms of like stylistically, it's a challenge. Because I felt like after 2 movies who were both character driven and we follow one central character and we film their lives, and I felt like, okay, I know how to make a character driven film, and I know, what you need to do in order to have the film, but I do not know how to make a film that's about a policy, about many people, but not making it talking heads like, a TV or sort of, how can you make a film that's about an issue, a policy that does not necessarily follow one character, is not character driven, equally compelling and visually interesting. And that was when I started making it. I was like, this is the challenge, the biggest challenge I needed to solve with this film, like to figure out how to make it compelling. Yeah.
And how'd you do it? I mean, I know that I see the results, but it's hard because I mean, I think a lot of us go through like, all right, how am I going to do this so it's, I mean, there's the one thing about you don't want it to be the same as other, you don't want, but it's more important, more importantly is taking what you're saying, the story, and trying to really craft something that makes sense and literally point the camera and frame it and figure out, you know, are they going to look at the camera? Are they going to, you know, what's going to happen? Like, was that something that evolved, or did you go in with a specific plan and intention?
I think it's gradually evolved, but because I was aware of that challenge and knew that that's something that I wanted to overcome, I did not want to make a film that's one talking head after another and very typical issue dog in the way that if you have a group of characters. So it's like looking at the story and every single character that we go out to meet or story element that eventually would become part of the story, I ask myself, what is the visual elements of this part? How can I push it further and further to make it visually intriguing? So it's like with looking at everything and think what kind of experimentation that I could do with that segment.
Will that lead us into
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, that's a fun
so Nanfu's going to do, well, you know, I mean,
yeah.
Nanfu came with a couple of clips, which is pretty cool that we're going to get to see, so go ahead.
No one has ever seen this clip. So this is actually really, really interesting because I was leaving my house today and I started thinking what can be useful to show people.
I'm gonna stop for a second. See, that's the way I make movies. Like I wonder what I'm gonna show or how I'm gonna shoot something, and then I'm leaving my house. I'm like, oh, I have an idea. Like,
Yeah.
But that's why I asked before, like, how much do you think about it and go through? But anyway, that's beside the point.
Yeah, a lot of them is like you see something and then you actually at that second responded to it and then the new idea came out. So the thing that I'm going to show is a before and after clip. And so there is a before clip. It was shot at a very early stage of production. And I wasn't in China. And it was so there is a character in the film who is an artist who always make art that's very critical of the one-child policy. And kind of like I knew him before, and a lot of people knew him because he's one of the only few people who are critical. And so I'm like, okay, given all this background. So the kind of art he would do, there are two things. One is he would go out and photograph a lot of that got killed and abandoned in the trash. And so he has ton of photographs. And then the other thing he did is he actually brought those babies, fetuses back and preserved them, like, you know, and put them in the jar. So anyway, so we knew this and we knew that we wanted them to be a part of the story. So at an early stage, we had a camera person go to film while none of us like could go. So it's just a camera person. And it was
none of you can go because
surveillance and also just not knowing whether it's even safe. And this guy was surveilled that we knew. So the camera person also didn't have much time, you know, also didn't know what to expect. We knew that he had these things. So anyway, the first clip that you're going to see is a scene that the camera person shot in his garage where he hid all those objects. And it was not great cinematography.
let's just watch.
Let's watch, and then I'll tell you after.
And
Yeah.
just quickly, I'm hoping everyone knows what One Child Nation is and the story, and if you don't, you should probably figure that out maybe now or after. But I just, if you haven't seen it, we can't really go into it too much.
Let's go show the before clip, and then I talk a little bit about after, and then before we see the after clip. So, so bright. So, so as you could see, there were many things that like that was not like perfect shot. Yeah, there were the flickering lights in the fluorescent lights in the first sequence, and then later. So anyway, this was a very beginning when we got this footage back, and then we started fundraising, and and we put this in the example, it actually made a lot of funders rejected us because people were like, no, we can't show this. This is like too pro-life, this is too brutal, this is too violent. And then even towards later, much later, there were a lot of like within the team or people who have seen it, it's like, you cannot include this person in the film. He's like just too much, we can't watch it. You have to take him out, he doesn't belong to the story. A lot of opposition towards this. I knew that he needed to be in the film, always, like there was no question. But I also know that if people hated it so much, and if the people have so much problem with it, or they didn't want to watch it, then it's not achieving the impact that I want it to be. So what happened is, and then in one trip that I needed to go back to China, and so the first time I was going to meet him and to film him and complete, like reshoot everything. Right. And I did go with a cinematographer, a friend, and on the way there, the cinematographer asked me, she's like, how do you want to film this? And I remember we were discussing, it was like an hour car ride. And I basically said, this scene has always been a problematic scene for people. So we want to shoot it in a way that we can see life in this dead. We can see life and beauty and warmth. So those are the keywords for this shoot. And we want everyone who sees it, like, felt empathy and love and care, and they don't want to, like, they don't hate it. It did not disgust them. So that would be the goal to film this. So that determines, using warm lights and then I'm going to show you the after clip. But also, you saw the photographs that we saw in this scene. So the other thing is, he has taken so many photographs that are very, very brutal, graphic to watch. But those photos are crucial to the story too. So we're thinking about how do we present these photos to people? And again, coming back to the challenge of like making the film that is about issue and policy, we're gonna take any opportunity to make it visually compelling. So this is what we did. You're going to see a 5-minute scene probably combine those two segments, complete the same object, the same story, but we redid the shooting. Same person, the same space, the same painting, the same thing. So just cinematography really changed it. After we did this.
It's not just cinematography. I mean, that's a well thought out, beautifully directed sort of, seeing one thing and then saying, you know what? And it's like bringing out that beauty and love in a scene. And I mean, it's gorgeously shot.
Yeah. Eventually that also it became our title sequence, and no one now would say, oh, we don't want him to be in the film, or we don't want this section to be in the film.
No, the title sequence is gorgeous. I mean, yeah, it's part of that. I just to drill down a little bit. So you went with one cinematographer, any other people?
No, just the two of us.
And who is this person? Because I want to hire this person.
He's in China. He's
I still want to
very
hire
talented.
This person. Beautiful.
And we shot on Sony A7S.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I never liked you. Oh. A7S.
Oh, no, wait.
What kind
that
of
was not Sony A7S. Actually, it's a Panasonic GH5 for this shoot.
What kind of lens? Do you remember?
It just...
it was a 30-some millimeter up on the shelf.
No. It was like we all did... I really feel like equipment is less important in a way.
I do too, but it's just so beautiful. And I thought, because I would love to be able to go with one person, and I mean that it looked like a dolly shot of some sort. Yeah. And it's absolutely gorgeous, and I think it's so great how, I mean, as a documentary filmmaker, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to go back and reshoot something. Yeah. But this made total sense. Yeah, because I also, the first one, it's almost like a research shoot. Right. So, so it's, we had to go back. They should show this in universities around the world in this way. Like, I love this. This is so great. Yeah. So, can you put up some of those stills that I gave you? There's just some stills of some of the scenes that you shot. So this one. Yeah. So who was here? I sort of like to me, like, it's really interesting how when we go into a situation, we sort of have to feel it out and figure out, all right, how am I going to shoot this? What, you know, and then you're thinking on your toes.
Yeah, I like
What
this how
happened?
you are now surprising me pouring out
Yeah.
stills. So this was in a shop like that was like probably 2 minutes walk from my house, and my grandpa always go to this shop to like chat with the other elders. My grandpa is the person who's on. Oh, they can't see it. Who's sitting on the left of the frame. He always goes to this shop, and every day. And that one day, I was at home filming, and I had a cinematographer with me too. And I passed it, and I noticed they were talking, and then I saw this moment, and I was like, "Wow, this is to me. I really like the look of it, just like a bunch of really old dudes in the village." And I was like,
You,
"I
mi- you might as well be in Little Italy and then being in a social club. Like you've seen,
yeah."
this is great.
Yeah, I really liked how they were. There was no like, that was how they were sitting there and talking. It's like I really like the look, and it would be so great if I go and ask my grandpa questions about how he felt about like his granddaughter, because it's like all men, and I know that they are all gonna be like discussing and chatting. So the cinematographer was staying in my house at during those few days. So it was like, let's go, let's just like go together, and it was handheld. Um, and I was sitting off the frame on my grandpa's that side. If you look, you can see his eyeline is looking at me, and so I just like, hey, grandpa, like I was like, what are you chatting? I wanted to like talk a little bit, and with the rest of the people are all strangers, kind of,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to go directly into what your feelings about the one-child policy. So I actually started by chatting something really like um, not alarming. So I was asking them about other things. Anyway, we
Yeah,
don't
you
want to
ease
go into
into it,
detail.
and
Yeah,
no, but that's a
yeah,
really important facet of
yeah,
cinematography because I think a lot of people they want to they you have to go into a situation. You don't want to just start with the questions, right?
yeah,
But like I work with people sometimes, and they get a little hung up, and they're not sure what to say or what to do, and I just like say, just be yourself.
yeah,
Just be normal. And if you can just be normal in yourself and, you know, who you are, not saying this is why I'm here. I
yeah,
mean, you're there to make a film about,
yeah.
the one-child policy, but you're also there because you're a human being.
Yeah, so it's
You know what I
basically
mean?
a
And
conversation.
I love
Yeah,
hearing, yeah, and just keep, and that's what I love when in some of these other shots,
yeah,
you do keep it conversational, but you also keep it pointed.
yeah.
And it's really, like, I love that. That was fun. And I love the guy on the right. He's just got such great style. I was like, I gotta get those shoes. I gotta get that.
This scene, like if you are filming this kind of a scene, this scene does have a challenge in the editing though. We talked there for 40 minutes or maybe half an hour, 40 minutes. You don't have cutaways.
cutaways, I know.
And any cutaway would seem very intentional and strange because you cut away to something. So I, like in the editing room, had to be really clever in a way that the cutaway is part of the story too, or you cut to something that works. Yeah.
But once again, it's like you're respecting what the scene is telling you as opposed to injecting what you think,
Yeah.
sometimes editorially, and which leads me to an interesting question. Editing.
Yeah.
You're an editor too.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think
and we were talking about like how does editing affect your camera work or any of those kinds of questions, but more importantly, I don't know.
I think
Editing is just incredible.
cinematographers would all become better cinematographers if they try edit it at least once or twice. Then they would know, oh shit, I need this to be able to edit. Like would help them to become better cinematographer. And also, I think the secret of like who said Julia said the other day, the directors of American Factory, the secret to good cinematography is good editing.
Great editing,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I've shot the crappiest stuff, and like it comes out, and people are like, "That's great cinematography." I'm like, "It's awful," but David Teague did an amazing job, the editor. So, just one funny thing because I was an editor for a long time, and I wanted to do camera work, and I tried to be a camera person, I tried to be an assistant, and I talked to one. I wonder if he's here. anyway, I talked to one cinematographer, and I'd call him up and say, listen, I was an editor. I think I'd be a really good cameraman because I have that editing, you know. And then I called up one guy, and he's like, I said, you know, I think I'd be a pretty good camera person. And he goes, yeah, maybe not, though. That might not help. And I said, what do you mean? And he said very, very clearly, he goes, says, you know, I know editors who become camera people, and they never just stay with the shot. They're always looking for the next shot, and they never just let it be in the frame. And I was like, you're right. I just moved too much. I never. But you really can, like, you're sort of, you're very calm, and I love that. Like your filmmaking is calm.
I feel like if you stay long, there is always something surprises you. Yeah. Like I love, like, I'm just like holding on to 1 more second, 3 more seconds, and then something magic happens. I was like, you know, those are the most exciting. I was like, I'm so glad that I didn't move, because, yeah.
And it's like when you're interviewing people, you know, when that silence happens, don't take up the space and try to just let it be. And then, those moments come. I guess let's flip through. That was sort of fun.
Yeah, that's fun. I don't know what you're showing.
Yeah, I don't, me neither. Let's see the next one. Oh, okay. So this is a scene where the midwife, you can explain it, but I just love what happens here, and I wanted to know if, you know, this idea of surprise and like not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think
and
how
being
many people have seen One Child Nation, actually? Only a few. So for people who have seen it, this probably is a memorable scene, and it was a complete surprise to me when I was filming. This woman is a midwife in my village. She's 84 years old, and one night I decided to go to her home to just a chat, and I did not know.
It was just you, right? Or
it was just me.
That's what I thought.
It was just one person,
and
I have the mirror shot. Yeah, and I had no idea what she would say or what anything would turn out. I haven't seen her probably for 10 years or longer, or 20 years. I don't know. So I went and I started filming as soon as I can. I always do. And then when we sat down, I thought I was going to ask her a warm-up question. It's so easy. The question I asked was, so how many babies do you think you delivered in your entire career? So since she's 84. And I thought she would be so proud and say something. And she said, no, I actually don't remember how many babies I delivered. I didn't keep track of that. But I do remember I had aborted and killed 50,000 to 60,000 babies. And that was like 2 minutes into the conversation. And I was like, wow. And I didn't know what the rest of it would be. And so it just one surprise after another. And by this moment, she was like, another surprise later on, she was like, well, like I felt so guilty for what I did. So now I only treat infertility disorders. I help couples to like give birth, have babies. And I've helped so many during the past few years that they all thanked me. They would all like send me a flag and thank me for helping them having child. And she's like, come, I'll show you. So she led me to this room, which was complete dark before. And the moment she turned on the light, and then I saw so many flags. Each flag is one baby. And later on, you would see that each flag has a photo of a baby on it. And I was just shooting, and I was completely shocked. This is not it. She would let me into another room, go from here, and that room is full of flag too. And she just kept turning on the light. And then she turned on the light, and I saw many flags, and she turned on another light. And I was like, oh my God.
You hear, like, there's like, right in this scene, right as the light's going on, you hear Nanfu going, something like, oh my God. Like, I think he's in Chinese, and Mandarin, it's like, but it's beautiful. And so, two things. Who shoots on their own here? Who will shoot like one-man band, as they say? I mean, it's like it's a whole subject in and of itself. But how do you think this would have been different? Can you just flip the next picture? I just want to see. Next one. Next one. Next one. That. So this, to me, is the key of this scene.
I'm so glad that you said that.
No, this is it. You know, you go into a place and you just, you know, especially when you're you know, you're just shooting on your own and you go in and, you know, I
Yeah.
love to shoot before
Yeah.
people sit in for an interview. I love to shoot as I'm going into places, and you do too, obviously.
Yeah.
The moment where you see a character like this smile,
Mm-hmm.
to me, it pulls you in. It pulls me in. And, you know, other people might do it differently where they sit, you know, they don't go in with the camera on. They go in maybe with a crew,
Yeah.
which is fine. And they sit her down, light it maybe a little bit or not at all. And they turn it on, and she's sitting there, and they ask her the question, and the question, and the question. Maybe they ask her other questions. But there's such a beauty in being able to know and just go in and let things happen naturally. And that smile is a key to the scene. What you just said is the next key to the scene, in terms of what she said, that first question. Then when she turns on that light and she goes into the next room, and then you close up on the kids and it makes for a beautiful scene. One, do you think you would have? It's such a stupid question. Fuck it. Do you think, like, if you went in with a cinematographer?
No, it would be different totally. I know how what you were saying, and I think it is true. Like sometimes if you have a crew, especially if you have like 3 people, 4 people, and set up equipment, you know, with big equipment and lighting and everything, like I've experienced that too. Like cinematographer or the crew would say they need time, they need half an hour, to set it up, and by the time, and this is like I started filming the moment I walked in. I mean, like depending on different circumstances, you build the trust. You know you have the trust. You can do that, and I could do this, and especially with a small camera, so they were not
Flip to the
intimidated.
next picture. Go ahead.
And then
Next one. Sorry.
and I'm like
This
curious.
one.
Oh, this one. So if you wait the crew to set up, sometimes what you lose is that kind of like very human and the very raw and intimate and natural, organic moments. And then when they sat down, they changed their personality completely. And
Obviously, that was about trust, and she,
yeah,
you know, she gave birth. I mean, she was your midwife, whatever.
Yeah.
Midwife. I was gonna say, but you know, if you take it, we go back to the other scene with the artist. That feels as intimate as this does.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm really glad you showed what you showed, but I'm just sort of floored because that seems so intimate. And I find it really hard to sort of create those beautiful sort of the imagery and sometimes keep that intimacy and that the intimacy and a sense of, you know, things just unfolding. Anyway, there's no real question. It's just sort of like, it's really good. So.
Yeah, I think sometimes it depending on what is your relationship with the person you're going to film. Are they going to be okay if you start filming right away? And then also, what are you trying to get from that person? If you know, for example, the artist, I already know exactly what I needed. The pictures, how I wanted to amplify it, how I wanted to visualize it. So all those things are not natural. You go in and just start variety filming. They are very constructed, and they require set up the projector. You set up the, you know, everything perfect.
Did you set that up ahead of time? Did you say, do you have a projector? And should
Yeah, we
bring
asked him, do you have a projector? He said no, and it's like, okay, we'll bring one.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's the same space, and we know what the space could look like, and from before, we know it might be ugly if you don't do it well, and how to use the space and bring it out.
Yeah, no, it's really beautiful. I'm just gonna ask seriously, what kind of camera is here, and how did you do
That was the
how did you do your
Panasonic
sound?
GH5.
What is it?
Panasonic GH5.
And then
And
what
the
do you do for
sound is
sound?
the sound is you know, like they have, I don't know
A
what
little
it's called.
shotgun mic or something?
They have a hot shoe attached. Like what is called, like Sony has that for this
Yeah.
camera, so it allows you to plug in 2 XLR cable. So I had a wireless mic and a shotgun mic.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so nice. I sometimes try to do that and I can't. I always want to, but I'm like I always use a bigger camera, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Even with like one camera and just me,
Yeah.
I feel like it's too much. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'll try that. And it's
You
just
wish
sort
there
of-
were cameras built in the eyes. That would be how
Nah,
great.
I think, well, maybe there are, and we just don't know it. So, all right. So, what else?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, what's it like? Well, what time do we? How much time do we have?
Oh,
10
maybe
minutes. All right.
audience
I'm just gonna
question.
say, yeah,
Yeah.
we're on the same wavelength. Yeah, I know we're not supposed to, but we don't have a lot of time. We have to cut, but maybe like 2 or 3 questions. I'd love to make them not. Don't make them long statements. Short questions. That's what we'd love. Who has a short question? That's a really great one. Go ahead.
Safety.
Safety. Okay.
It's never safe to do anything political in China, but anybody who does anything political, whether it's activists or filmmakers or writers, they all and artists too. I think we all have to make a decision ourselves, deciding whether it's worth doing or what we want. And to me, I felt I wanted to do. I know it's not safe, but I don't know to what extent it's not safe or what kind of risks or repercussion it would have. But I am willing to do it because I do feel it's really important and it is our generation's responsibility to document this part of history. Have you done a lot of shorts before you made your feature?
Not before now.
Yeah. When I was making Hooligan Sparrow, I was a student at NYU. It was supposed to be my graduate thesis project. And the requirements to make a 30 minutes film during the 3 months, you would shoot during the summer vacation and you would edit for the last semester. And I just kept editing because the story is so complicated. And I remember before I graduated, we have to do a presentation. And I said to my program director, I said, I don't think this is going to be a 30 minutes short because I couldn't get it down to 30 minutes. And she was like, oh no, like no student can have exception. If you can't edit a short, then mostly means that you're a bad editor, like.
Was she part of the Chinese government?
No, wait. She hasn't seen
You
anything yet.
cannot do that.
So,
Sorry, I hope that wasn't terrible.
so she was like, no, like it would be not fair if you go over 30 minutes and other students are under 30. And I was like, okay, do you mind to come to my editing room and we'll watch it together and you tell me what to cut. And so she sat there and we watched it like over an hour. And after watching it, she's like, okay, you can show this. So that's like how, but when I was making it, I didn't know whether it's going to be 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes. I had no idea. It was the first, I had not made anything more than 10 minutes before then. And everything I made was school assignments. So really, I didn't know it was going to be a feature film. But eventually, I just kept doing it, and it became a film. I don't think that there is an absolute rule that you have to make shorts to prove that you can before you make a feature. I don't think that's true. I think it really depends on the story, and yeah, the story it would tell you whether this is a short or a feature.
Yeah, you're just listening to the material, just letting it tell you, and it sounds a little bit like pie in the sky kind of.
Or let like your rough cut screening or other people tell you.
That's right. No, and I noticed on you had Jonathan Oppenheim. Yeah. Who else did you have?
Carol Dysinger.
Yeah, Carol's great.
Peter Lucas was a mentor of me at NYU. Mark Monroe.
So
yeah.
the key to like a huge key is to just get great people who are honest, who are tough, to watch your footage with you, rough cuts, and just that has always been my saving grace. That I had access to those people.
Yeah.
5 minutes. I wanted to say one other thing. Yeah, shorts are great. I think short films are wonderful, and they're sometimes they're not just as hard as features, but they take a lot of the same, beginning, middle, end. Shorts are very, very challenging, so they can be a real help in trying to sort of hone, and they're not expensive, and they don't take 20 years, which is good. So I was also going to say, can you just go back? I just don't want to. No, I just want to go back. I'm going to be selfish here. Go back. Oh, this. All right, go back. Right there.
This,
so
right?
this.
My husband shot this.
It seems like it, actually. This, for me, this could be such a, handled in the wrong hands, could be sort of this could be a narcissistic, annoying scene of a young woman with her baby talking to her mother about injustice, but it's beautiful. Was it hard? What was the thought process for you? Like, normally it would be like, oh, I'm gonna go film my mom, just me, intimate. But what was going on there?
Was this scene actually, because it wasn't intentionally actually shot for the film. It was, we didn't know at the time whether it's going, like we're going to include my mom or anything in the film, but it was my birthday that day, and it was the first birthday after I had my child. So I was like, let's record this. It's at my home, and telling my husband, since my mom is like there, it's like, let's record a conversation between me and my mom. Like, we want to talk about the history of our family. So that turned out to be like a 5-hour conversation where my mom talked about my entire life and her marriage and everything. And the one-child policy that eventually got used in this was like just a few minutes. Yeah.
And
I mean, it's good that me and my husband, we met in grad school at NYU, so we both know like how to use a camera, how to shoot, and sometimes when we say let's shoot together, and it just like it's nice, it's usable.
No, it's gorgeous. I mean, but the light, it looks like you lit it. I don't know if you did, but it looks
Yeah,
gorgeous.
we did.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, but it was like very simple.
Yeah.
His camera, my camera, 2 DSLR cameras, and we just did it. Yeah.
And so the shot, go to the next shot. Of like, yeah, that was
Those
a
are the
different
2
time.
cameras.
That
No,
was
it's the same time.
Wow.
Those are the 2 cameras.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Man, you're good. All right, one last question from audience. Martina, very good. Go ahead.
I think
How do you communicate with the cinematographer? That's a question.
yeah, I think taking the artist scene, for example, that's a cinematographer, and I think what would make me feel like it's a great cinematographer is if we discuss how we want to, what we want to achieve, how we want to approach, and then the result not only like meets the expectation but also exceeds it, And then I think the other thing is that's for like more constructed scenes, like you have a goal, you have a vision to achieve. And then for more verite scenes, I think it's easy to observe how they react. Do they see the same things as you do? Like if you are seeing something unfolding or happening in front of you, would the cinematographer also have the same, sensibility to capture that? Or if you point out, because a lot of this verite would require immediate response. Yeah.
Yeah, the best thing is when you're with a cinematographer and you're about to tell them, you're not going to tell them because you don't want to step on their toes, but you want to tell them, push in, and they push in right as you were about to think it or whatever. And then the worst is when that happens and they don't push
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
And it's hard, though. It's hard to, like, it's like using, it's like it's just trying to figure out how to get the most out of a person and a photographer and to work together. And sometimes it clicks and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
When it clicks, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and also, like our cinematographer, Yuan Chen, he was a guy who graduated from NYU too. We all know each other, just friends. And, sometimes like the first shoot that he came out to help us shoot, I was shooting too. We need 2 cameras. And when I came back that night to review the footage, I was like, damn, he shot so good. It's so much better than mine. It's like, of course, come back.
And that's a lovely thing that happens. So we just have time for any closing thoughts or, feelings you want to share or anything. You don't have to.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will close then. I will just say, this is a beautiful movie. I'm so impressed with you and the fact that you've only been doing this 8-9 years. It pisses me off. But I'm really excited for you, and this has been a pleasure, and I'm so glad we're neighbors now. We both live in New Jersey near each other.
Yeah.
And thank you all for coming, and hope it was interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.